Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for September 17th, 2013. I'm Joe Lynch. My guest tonight is author and journalist Chris Faraone. Chris is joining me tonight as special co-host, and we hope to see more of him in the coming months. Chris has written for local, regional, and national publications such as the late, great Boston Phoenix, the Boston Herald, Esquire Magazine, and the Columbia Journalism Review. Most recently, Chris is the contributing editor at BigBoss, the online alternative news site. He has appeared on WGBH's Greater Boston with Emily Rooney, WBZ TV with John Keller, and as a commentator on WRKO Radio. His published books, 99 Nights with the 99%, which chronicles the Occupy Boston movement, and the recent Heartbreak Hell, his experiences as a journalist covering the Boston Marathon bombings, have been well received and reviewed. He is the recipient of 2 awards from the Association of Alternative News Media, and it is my pleasure to welcome back to Greater Somerville author, writer, reporter, and Dig Boston editor, Chris Faraone.
Thank you very much.
You're back. It took me a while to get you back into Somerville, but
I said I'd never come back.
I know you did. But
how can I resist?
We dangled it. We said out there, you live in JP. You're originally from New York, so you're 50% hipster.
Something like that.
So you can come back to Somerville.
Excellent. I mean, I love Somerville. So.
Did you ever think that we would be the subject of articles saying Somerville is hipster nation?
Before they were specifically saying that, you saw all the strands because there really is a lot of great stuff going on.
Right.
I think I mentioned to you last time. I remember years ago they did the Willy Wonka in Smell-O-Vision right outside of the studio. So before it was the marketing of hipsterdom, cool stuff was going on. And I got the Hunk Festival is one of my favorite things in the region.
Yeah.
I've walked the entire thing a few times. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Originally from New York.
Originally from Queens, which is I guess in a sense the Somerville of New York City.
Sure.
Especially in the sense. The neighborhood I grew up in, the neighborhoods Flushing, Bayside, Astoria are now really hot, and they certainly weren't when I was growing up there. And it's good to see, but there's also my family's gone and it's unaffordable. So a lot of parallels without a doubt.
That's the double-edged sword that we face with gentrification and being hip. I told you I got to do a couple of PSAs very, very quick.
Go for it.
Let me see. 1 week from today, the preliminaries in Somerville for Ward 1 Alderman, Ward 3 Alderman, Ward 5 School Committee. Please get out there and vote. It is not your duty. It is a privilege. I think it's also a duty, though.
Yeah,
I think it is a duty. Let me see. There was a big fire in Magoon Square today. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that I'm a reporter, but I did happen to speak to few folks in the know. That was not an arson fire, so please don't get upset. Get upset for the folks who did lose their apartments and their homes, but take it easy. Home Movie Day, October 26th. Gordon Nelson, one of our major Duomos down here. Gordon is doing Home Movie Day again. Last year it was a success. I hear they had to turn people away. Go on to Scat TV's website. Find out what it's all about. Bring in your home movies on DVD or bring them on tape. Gordon will help you with them. It's a great time. There we are. I wanted to have you on the show because I've had many, many people from the media on this show before, mostly from print, but television personalities as well. But the print media has gone through such an upheaval over the last 8 to 10 years that I thought you were the perfect person to start to talk about alternative ways that people are getting their news, people are getting their information. We have dailies in this city. We have weeklies, we have a magazine. All of those are great in terms of disseminating information, but when it comes to investigative reporting, I think you hit the nail on the head with a couple of things that you've done in the past, so I'm going to kind of let you start talking about what alternative news reporting is all about.
The question comes up a lot. We had formal burial of the Boston Phoenix last Friday, and the day before, on Thursday at MIT, was a big conference, a big panel discussion symposium, and there were people from the history of the Phoenix in the audience and on the panel, including my former editor Carly Carioli, and of course that's a big topic. And you get your media snobs who raise their hand and say, what was alternative about the Phoenix anyway?
Right.
And I think that it's a difficult question to answer. I have a million answers for it, but for me it's hard because that's always changes. So if the Globe isn't covering, and I'm not saying they don't, they do sometimes, if the Globe isn't, and the Herald aren't covering black communities, for example, if they're not covering Dorchester, Roxbury, some parts of Somerville that are less savory.
As intensive as, say, like the Banner covers.
Right. Or even more so, but we can define ourselves alternative by doing that.
Right.
So, one example that I did was I spent a couple of weeks just walking up and down the 7-mile stretch of Blue Hill Avenue, literally sometimes overnight, hanging out with some of the prostitutes, the drug dealers, and seeing, it's open-air drug dealing and just putting a more detailed face on this. The Globe, of course, does stuff like that too sometimes, but the way we do it, I say something like with some stank on it. Another thing is not just straight media criticism, but watching the media. Sitting there and watching them make asses of themselves a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Say with Occupy Boston, this is something that helped define my career, and Occupy Everywhere. And one just description in my book is that I remember standing there one day and watching, I won't say who, it doesn't matter, television news reporters come in high heels, and the guy with his gelled hair, and come into the camp and walk around the muddy dirt and just not even realize how ridiculous that is. So
you're not going to give us names, right?
Right. No,
come on, Chris. This is what this show is going to be about.
If you want to see me bash NECN, just go on my Twitter any morning. Yeah. I'm doing it.
No, but when people talk about alternative news sources, you were widely talked about when you did what you did at the Occupy Boston. You're a reporter. You got into the middle of this thing. You were camping out with them. You were trying to find out what makes Occupy Boston tick. And you wrote about that, and people were just like, what is this new kind of reporting that we're doing? It's not just sound bites.
And it's not new. It's a long, proud tradition, not just of alt weeklies, but actually the piece I just wrote for Columbia Journalism Review is about the history of the alternative press. Back to Thomas Paine, but also all of your, feminist publications over the years, black publications over the years, Native American publications, gay publications. So it's really looking at things that aren't often looked at. And with Occupy, that was my editors giving me the time and resources. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. You have, especially with cutbacks in newsrooms, we were just talking about how a lot of 6-year town reporters were just cut from the Globe. Those reporters were already overworked. So imagine the ones that are still there. Now, it's physically impossible. It's not hyperbole. It's physically impossible for them to, on top of that regular workload, filing 5-6 stories a day. If we're talking about patch reporters, they're also, it's more than that. They're doing their invoicing, they're taking pictures, loading video, editing the website. There's no time to do a deep investigation. Are you serious? To be filing Freedom of Information Act requests and such. So, of course, we're talking about alternative journalism in the form of investigative reporting right now, but it takes a lot of forms. With music and arts and entertainment, sometimes it's simply about being at that basement show and seeing the next band before the Globe or a bigger, Rolling Stone national publication gets it.
It's an amazing thing. When they announced that the Phoenix was folding up shop, it was an amazing kind of memory jog for me because I'm of that generation.
Right.
When the Phoenix first started to hit the news stands, and people would say, it's free? What kind of newspaper is free? Small community newspapers, they were free, but they didn't have much content. The Phoenix blew the doors off of everything by doing some of their investigative reporting. And I remember for many, many years, on the way through Harvard Square, coming back from work, pick up the Phoenix.
Right. And the model evolved and changed over the years. Sometimes it was free, sometimes it was $1, $1.50. When we went, I'm a geek for all the old stuff, so I've been going through the old Phoenixes for years, and it really blow you away, like 400-page issues, big foldouts, an insert, the computer section. stuff like that.
Right,
And
right.
a lot of people talk about
And let's not forget the personals.
the personals.
The
were huge.
personals were stupendous.
In a sense, the Boston Phoenix did not invent Facebook, but as far as like kind of the liking something online, so personal ads, like interactive ones, that was all a subdivision of the Phoenix. And
we could attribute them in inventing the paper Facebook.
Yeah, well, just like and so, but really, there were so many different facets of things that the Phoenix did first. So of course they're always credited with Chris Lombardi's work on the child abuse, the priest scandal, which was
in the Catholic Church. They broke it open, and then the Globe kind of picked up on it.
And the Globe did a great job. They're the ones who put it all in the spreadsheet, got a lot of the information. But, those early seeds were planted by the Phoenix. A lot of the AIDS epidemic in Boston at the time, Phoenix was on top of it. And, the thing is, it's not like people just went into the newsroom and said, I want to write about this. Now that I've heard people talk about it, about what happened in the back end, it was like, these things were still deliberated. The Phoenix started in the late 60s, mid-60s, but really editorial standards, high editorial standards weren't brought there for about a decade after.
Somebody told me Stephen Mindich, who was the owner and publisher, somebody told me that Mindich used to put in 18 to 20-hour days on that newspaper.
I mean, over the years, we all did. And that was kind of, nobody was there for the money, except for, Mindich was there for many reasons, and he he definitely made a lot of money over the years, but, it was the experience. So now, you said I'm writing for Esquire. A lot of that is largely thanks to a few people, one of whom is Charlie Pierce, who's a Phoenix alum, of course, and he's directed for the Boston Globe magazine. Another one is Joe Cohane, who, former Somerville resident, he was my editor at Dig Boston, which is the other alternative in town, which is where I'm helping now. I'm not.
We're going to talk about the Somerville files, by the way.
We'll talk about the Somerville files.
We're going to talk about it.
But it's a great network. It's horrible that it's not around anymore, but I'm not someone who's not about nostalgia. But as far as moving forward, it's given me the base to do that. So I'm psyched about that.
Yep. So you go now. There's a trend out there with online publishing, self-publishing, online publishing. You take your experiences as a reporter for the Occupy Boston. You do 99 nights with the 99%.
Yeah.
That's still online.
It's still online.
Yeah.
It's there are free versions. You could buy it on Amazon in any form, in paperback, in an e-version. I put the book out with distribution, but I put it out independently for a few reasons. One is I wanted to get it out there. I put it out in March of 2012, and Occupy had started 2 years ago today, on September 17, 2011. That would have been difficult. I've had an agent for years. We've never actually done a project together. I'm not against doing a project with a major publisher, but it was an opportunity for me to really get out there. And a lot of the, I work with real editors. A lot of those stories had already been edited at the Phoenix. A Columbia Journalism Review at that point had written a story about my coverage. So I felt like I had some validation. And when the book came out, I got good reviews from The Economist, Utne Reader, a lot of really big places. So, and I do recommend it for everyone. But I will say that you really have to work your book. I got a lot of press hits because I hustled it. I was on Twitter, Facebook, calling people, emailing people. In a sense, you have to do that unless you're J.K. Rowling when you put a book out with a major too. But I feel like, I'm a big fan of underground music. So I kind of followed the advice I've been giving musicians for years. Right. Which is like, stay away from the majors. They're going to, take advantage of you.
Well, they'll gobble you up.
They will.
They're about profit, not necessarily talent.
But even they're the mentality, and this is for real. They'll put out 300 books, only expecting to make money off one, or maybe even more. Right. I didn't want my book to get lost in the mix. So no matter what, I did sell some copies, and people have read it. So I'm psyched about that.
And you come back with after the Boston Marathon bombings earlier this year, you come right back with another ebook, Heartbreak Hell.
Yeah, it was done in for similar reasons. The way that I did it, Heartbreak Hell is not in print. I put it up free. You can go to heartbreakhell.com. It's just really cool. It was right after the Phoenix went out of business. So what happened was, starting moments after the bombing, which I was only a few blocks away from, coincidentally, I'm getting texts and emails. So a lot of, for example, at the American Prospect in D.C., an editor there, a top editor there, was a Phoenix alum, and he had said to his staff, see if anybody from the Phoenix can do anything. And they reached out to me, and I made contacts with Racialicious and some other places. And I was already writing for the Dig, so I did some stuff at the Dig. And at the end, there's a lot of material that never got used because anybody remembers things were moving fast. So I would write something, and and then they'd announce the suspects were found. And,
Chris,
none of that would matter.
Let me do this only because I couldn't get through the entire book for tonight, but let me do this because Chris, reporters, I'm fascinated with people who know how to write. I can barely speak, but I love people who can write well. And what Chris did was, being a reporter on site, the day of the marathon bombings, Chris, because of the way that I guess writers do it, you jot down things. It's fleeting, but then you go back and you start
notepads,
and
put the puzzle together later.
Right. Put the puzzle together later. So I just want to read you a brief excerpt from Heartbreak Hell. It's by Chris Faraone, and it was the sub here is searching for sanity in Boston through a week of tragedy and terror. And what Chris basically does is he takes his own thoughts as a spectator, as a reporter, as a human being, and watching what's unfolding on the streets of Boston, and basically writes about it for 6 days. So Chris says, I entered the public garden where I was walking when the bombs went off blocks away nearly a day earlier, and I passed the famous swan boats, which are temporarily out of commission. I've never seen them defeathered in such nice weather, but that's not the biggest surprise out there. On the corner of the Common, amidst the momentary metastasizing national media, are some local TV reporters. Their routine is covering the likes of Kim and Kanye. But to my amazement, they're acting serious for a change. I scratch my head, scribble something in my notepad, and try remembering what this city used to look like. It kind of gives you chills thinking
it just
about...
did give me chills. I can remember exactly so that was at the corner of the Common, and I believe that's the day after the bombing, as I said. So first of all, just seeing that, there's a picture on there of the swan boat.
It's eerie.
It's eerie. And, I do like to throw a jab at TV reporters, but I saw a lot of them at their best, national and local. And as far as the way I covered things, like it or not, first of all, I'm not a Globe or Herald reporter, and I do cover the cops. They don't like me. I don't have a lot of access to those things, that kind of situation, even in my own city. Wolf Blitzer comes, you better believe he's going to have better access than me. He's got 30 aides running around for him, assistants. But I do have one thing. Sometimes being alternative is out of necessity, but what I have is knowledge of the city. And, I knew, for example, 4 days later than that, during the lockdown, I was like, wow, the city's empty. And I walked the streets. I went to Faneuil Hall, and I've been in Faneuil Hall without one other person in that entire place. And I'm getting complete chills thinking about it right now. It's like that Will Smith movie where he was the only person on the planet. It was...
Hancock?
Beyond
Is that the name of it?
No, it was, they all sound the same. Not Independence Day, but I Am Legend. And
I Am Legend.
So it really was, it was the creepiest thing I've ever experienced. And then, you run into a bunch of National Guardsmen with rifles, and it was wild. So, I didn't, and the other thing is there were thousands of reporters in town chasing the same balls, like a kid's soccer game.
I heard Anderson Cooper got lost one night.
I wouldn't doubt it. And I'll tell you, one ridiculous thing out of the book is that, Wolf Blitzer, one morning, I think it was the third morning, when they had figured out that it was they were pressure cookers used to make the bombs, had a pressure cooker on the set and was trying to show it to Deval Patrick, to the governor, and the governor's thinking, you could see, just think, what is this guy doing? And then a couple hours later, I'm walking by the CNN truck, and there's the pressure cooker on a folding chair next to the truck on the street.
Sitting in full public view.
Public view, 2 blocks from the finish line. Obviously, I'm not saying there's any nefarious, nefarious going on there.
You have to wonder, Chris, why they're trying to dumb down America so much.
It was, it's a lot of and also a lot of it. If you sat there outside, anybody who sat out, what is that, the Hyatt over there? If you sat outside and really just watched them, you were just, John King, even people who I kind of like a little. They're talking for hours at a time. Here we're filling up a half hour.
Right.
They're sitting in front of the camera for 6-7 hours at a time. Just saying the same thing. You say the same thing over and over again, people believe it, even if it's something so stupid, so silly. So, I do have respect for, especially the people behind the scenes, the real reporters in TV news, getting stories. I still think that your ABC, the nightly news, people deride them constantly. Those are some phenomenal newscasts, and they missed the ball on a lot of things. But cable news, really, they're just yapping away at this junction.
You know, and I mean, it's sad. I mentioned before that we have a lot of the local media on the show and stuff, and, you know, it's sad because people say to me, you know, it's a cable show. Let's you know, so I do my PSAs, and I give, you know, the hip-hop happenings that are in town for a week or 2 weeks. But I like having guests on who give me the perspective. I'm not the talking head. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on in your life.
I mean, and that's what I do. So in my life right now, you know, I just have a lot of things. We're helping restructure the Dig Boston, and the Somerville story was a 4-part series. Was the first thing.
Run with it. Talk about why did you and 2 other reporters decide to do the Somerville stories?
Actually, probably about a year ago now, I was approached by a couple of community advocates, activists from Somerville, and
former reporters.
And then I went to.
Right.
So what happens? I was approached by people from the community.
I got it.
And they showed me a lot of articles that had been written, piecemeal stuff, but some damning things, and as well as documents they collected and stories from meetings. And I get this kind of stuff all the time, especially at the Phoenix. And I always have open ears. You know, I'm willing to listen to people. It's why I get a lot of cool stories, odd stories, off the ball stuff. But this was pretty alarming. So I started to look into it. The first thing I did, and I will say this, is exactly what the Globe would never do. Is I reached out to the local reporters who had written those stories. You know, they're the institutional memory around here. And I said, you know, a lot of this stuff true. And from there, like I said before, it was time to start putting the puzzle pieces together. The Phoenix
with evidence,
right? And you know, thousands and thousands, literally thousands of pages of documents, and you know, file systems, and we had a whole war room. You know, big, you know, boards full of notices and whatnot, and then the Phoenix went out of business. We've been working on it about.
Phoenix was going to pick it up.
The Phoenix was going to. Well, I was a staff writer, so we were having meetings there really almost once a week for 6 months when the Phoenix went out of business, and we were close to ready to start publishing, and it was heartbreaking. And from there, we shopped.
And you had to shop it.
We shopped it around. People knew about it. It was mentioned in the editor's last note. And, you know, I don't need to say about what happened in between.
Right.
It wound up at Dig Boston.
Right.
Dig Boston is where I started my career. Over the years, it's had some struggles. It's had some great moments, particularly with A&E coverage over the past few years. But they lost the feature well. With the Phoenix out of business, a lot of advertising flowed back into the Dig. And we were able to bring a feature well back, and I'm helping do that. We started with the Somerville series. We've done a lot of really cool things since. We've done some work on the marathon bombing, looking at the Boston Research Intelligence Center. So not deep investigative reporting like the Somerville stuff, which is a 4-part piece, but really kind of heavy stuff.
But you know, Chris, I mean, I told you this when we had talked about it, you know. Some of the existing local media were poo-pooing the story, saying, tell us something new.
Yeah.
But I will have to tell you that since those articles got published, I've had more of the, not necessarily hipsters, but the newer folks in Somerville who never knew those stories. Yeah. They either got a slanted view from somebody else. They had never seen how Somerville had progressed over the years. So I think it was a critical piece to publish, but we're gonna speed up just a little bit, only because I want you to talk about what you're doing now, which is covering the mayoral race with how many candidates? 2,600.
Well, it's a dozen at this point, but it's funny because I think Minneapolis has like 30, so they got us beat big time in some sort of intense runoff situation. But 12 candidates is a lot in Boston, and I'll do what reporters never do. I'll give you the positive first, which there really are. A lot of really great candidates. I'm impressed with a bunch of them. I could name them off. You got Marty Walsh is leading a lot. He's seen as a labor guy, but he's also really a neighborhoody guy, as is Rob Consalvo. And I go on and on. Mike Ross is a city councilor, real visionary. Felix Giarroyo is a community advocate who I've seen on the front lines of plenty of foreclosure, eviction blockades and such over the years. It's just a lot of really, I believe, trustworthy people. And I never say these things about politicians. And I'm sure when they get in, we'll bump heads.
They're all going to tape this show.
Well,
they're going to grab it off the internet and they're going to go, look at what Faraone said about me.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been writing a column since the day after Mayor Tom Menino announced that he was stepping down. So that my 25th column in the Gazette, which is they have 13 papers. JP, Jamaica Plain Gazette, being the anchor, the flagship. They have 13 community papers around the city. Most of them run my columns. So today was the 25th one, and I've written about all the everything from ward minutiae to bigger issues, education, transportation. It's been a lot of fun. Tuesday's the primary in Boston too. It's going to be pretty intense, and then it's 2 people through November.
And then come November, the day after, what is it, the 5th? Is Boston's having theirs?
The 4th.
The 4th.
And
so Boston has theirs on the 4th, Somerville has theirs on the 5th, and on the 6th, you're going to start writing another series about the gubernatorial campaigns.
Before I get to that, I might put out I think I'll put out an ebook with all those columns plus a bookends about it called Hizanaru. The day after, because I can do that now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And as far as the gubernatorial race, I don't know how much I'll be covering it. I mean, I'm sure I will be, not as intensely as the mayoral race, particularly since I want to see what happens in the lame duck period and when the new mayor gets in. But on the other hand, I don't know what's going to happen, but there's a chance I may run for governor myself.
There you go.
So
there you go. I'd love to see that debate.
Well,
you, Martha, Steve Grossman, Berwick, a couple of others.
Whoever it is.
We're still waiting here, by the way. I mean, I've talked about it on the show. We're still waiting to see whether or not the 2 favorite sons are going to run.
And
Mike Capuano and Joe Curtatone, they've been talked up in the press. They've been talking up themselves, that they've been considering it. So here's the challenge, boys. Michael, Joe, come on to Greater Somerville when you're ready to talk about whether or not you're going to run. Don't give it to the nationals. Don't give it to your favorite reporters. Give it to Joe.
It's all got to start locally.
It's got to start local. All politics is local, because if either one of you decides you're going to run for higher office and you don't do it here on Greater Somerville, you'll never get any play from me. How's that?
It's important.
Chris Faraone, everybody, he's going to come back periodically. You're going to join us. You're going to bring your own stories to Somerville.
You know it.
Yeah, there you go. I want to thank Chris Faraone coming on to Greater Somerville. Some of you may remember the special that we did with the 3 authors, the 3 reporters for Dig Boston. Cayenne will be back next week. I will be back the week after. Look for Chris Faraone. Give us a buzz at 617-8826 down here at Scat TV if you want to see Gordon Nelson for the Family Home Movie Day. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is Greater Somerville. Stay safe. Stay informed.